Hey there, welcome to What Your Community Can Do For You. This is another workshop in the Building Your Creative Community series, which is co-presented by Happy Mag and the City of Sydney. Should we do some introductions?
Yep.
I'm Tom Cameron, I'm the music editor at Happy Mag.
And I'm Claudia Schmidt, I'm the news editor at Happy Mag.
And today we're also going to be phoning in Jake Stone, who is a musician from Bluejuice, great Australian band, and he's also, since being with Bluejuice, he's worked as an event producer and PR consultant and worn a few other hats for companies such as MusicNSW, who we're going to be talking about a bit. And we're also going to be speaking to Lachlan Wyllie, who is a support officer at Amrap, which is the Australian Music Radio Airplay project. He's also a band manager and a radio host with FBI Radio. So today's workshop is focused really on a bunch of the organisations, a few of which I've just mentioned, who exist in Australia, New South Wales and beyond to support local musicians, to support the music industry, whether that be financially, offering education in the form of workshops like this one. There's many programs out there, and a lot of this stuff is often free, so it's really useful to know about. It's all out there, the kind of stuff that every musician should know about and should be interacting with. Otherwise, they're doing themselves a bit of a disservice, quite honestly. So a few of the things that we're going to cover is APRA AMCOS, Music New South Wales, local councils for a bit as well, and then finally we're going to talk a bit about Amrap, which I mentioned before, the Australian Music Radio Airplay project. So cool. Moving things to APRA first. Now, APRA is a body that regulates royalties for public music use for Australian and New Zealand artists. So basically, if you're playing music in public or if it's getting played anywhere in public, and that can be anywhere from the radio to really big festivals to just the cafe on your corner, they're collecting royalties from those places and it's going back into the hands of Australian artists. And membership is free. Everyone who's an artist in Australia and New Zealand should be signed up to APRA because it's money coming back to you for your music being used elsewhere. So maybe could you just talk about how you've interacted with APRA in the past and how that works from a musician's perspective?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, sign up as a performer for APRA. It's really easy to do, and you register each of your songs as a work. And a couple of years ago when I started out with my first band, pretty early on we signed up to APRA, and you each do it, each band member does it individually. You create your own profile as a performer, and then you can register your works, which you submit for performance returns, are they called? Yeah, Tom will explain all that in a minute. And you know, you can do it. There's no time too early to sign up. You can do it right from the beginning. And as Tom said before, no matter what kind of gigs you're playing, even if it's just a small cafe gig to a bigger venue or a festival, whatever it is, you can submit a performance return and get money back for it. So it's really awesome to sign up as soon as you can and register your songs. It's a really easy process, and yeah, money is always great.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like getting your tax return for a musician. It's really useful, and it's actually worth mentioning that you don't need to be a songwriter or like a contributing writing member of a band to receive these performance checks. If you are performing anywhere, if you're performing in a covers band, for instance, you can still register as a performer on APRA. It's probably worth outlining how exactly this system works, and basically you might be asking yourself, where does the money come from? So how APRA works is that anywhere that is broadcasting music in a public space, whether that's digitally through radio or through, you know, any other means through the internet, or in person. So using the example of a cafe, they could either be playing music on the radio, they could be playing music from a playlist, or they could have a performer. Either way, if you're performing in a public space, you should be paying APRA for the rights to use that music. So APRA collects money from places that music is being performed in public, lists who is being played in those places, and then when everybody files their performance reports, and that comes back into the hands of Australian songwriters. On performance reports. Performance reports are something that, this is the real tax return for musicians. This is something that comes around once a year, and it is a listing of every gig that you've played in the last year. And you write down the set lists from all those gigs, you write down the locations that they were played. Then in a couple of months, all that data gets catalogued, and everyone who's filed their performance report gets a check. So this is something to sort of supplement the income you're getting from live gigs. It's really important. It's an extra bit of cash in your hand. I cannot iterate enough that every Australian performer or songwriter should be registered to APRA, because they exist purely to put performance and airplay royalties back into their hands. So they really do a great job. Just to close on APRA for a bit, they also work in a couple of other ways on top of just the royalties. So registering will also earn you discounts on travel, studio and gear hire, and also things like digital distribution. So some services that offer distribution, which is getting your music on Spotify and Apple Music and such, will offer discounts if you're an APRA member, and there's heaps more. The travel one is worth mentioning actually. Have you done any of the travel discounts with APRA?
Yes, I have used that discount many times. I've used it traveling with Virgin, but I understand there's different airlines that use it, although who knows what airlines are going to look like after coronavirus. But yeah, it's a really easy process. There was an email that you'd contact and you'd get free musicians luggage, which is amazing when you're touring interstate or even overseas. So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind.
It's all available on APRA and Music New South Wales website, so you should check that out for sure. Another organisation that we're going to talk about, Music New South Wales, does this as well. But both organisations, if you're a member, and membership is free off both of these, it's worth remembering that, do offer discounts with certain airlines, mainly in the luggage department. And just to close on APRA, it's also just a fantastic resource for education, for FAQs about the industry. Pretty much everyone we're going to talk about today has that in some way, shape or form on their website. If you want to look up the best way to get radio airplay, if you want to look up what workshops are happening for free near you, or if you want to look up an online video teaching you how to book a gig or something like that, all of these things exist not just on Happy, but on APRA, on Music New South Wales, on Amrap. There is a real wealth of free information out there that everyone should look out for.
Absolutely. Can I just add as well, APRA also run a lot of their own workshops, and I've attended a bunch of them in the past. And the other thing I've done with APRA is a program called Song Hubs, which was an incredible experience, and they host them all across the world, but also in Australia. And if you get selected and it's for overseas, they'll fly you out there. And basically it's like a 5-day workshop where each day you work with a different producer and engineer, and you write and record a song in one day. And yeah, it's just an incredible experience to do as a musician. So definitely keep an eye out for Song Hubs as well.
Yeah, this really applies to the theme of this workshop as a whole. It can seem counterintuitive at the time, but there are so many organizations that are really out there for the sole benefit of you as a musician or as a creative. It is an industry that needs support like any other industry. And all of these people are absolutely happy to help. They are there to help. And they really do some great work. So moving on to Music New South Wales. Music New South Wales is the sort of state music body in New South Wales. They're a non-for-profit organisation that is, like APRA, based on supporting artists and the music industry. And it's worth mentioning that if you're watching from outside New South Wales, there is a Music New South Wales for every state. So I think it's Q Music in Queensland, WAM, which is Western Australian Music in WA. Every state has their own version of this, and you should absolutely look them up if you're listening from outside New South Wales. What we're going to be talking about today is strictly Music New South Wales, but I think you'll find that pretty much every state runs a similar music program. So joining Music New South Wales as a songwriter or as a performer, as a musician, like APRA, is completely free, and it comes with a number of benefits.
Yeah, I have attended a couple of Music New South Wales workshops, and they've all been really amazing. One in particular was Professional Development for Women in Music, and that was an amazing workshop that they hosted at 301 Studios, and they had all different segments like engineering and working with synths and production and whatever else. And yeah, it was an incredible day, and they host particularly a lot of women-centric workshops, but also a lot of other types as well. They also hold a mentorship program for women in music, which is a really awesome opportunity. I believe that's already closed for this year, but keep an eye out in the future.
Music New South Wales run a lot of programs and workshops, like a couple of the ones we've just described. They run a Women in Electronic Music workshop, which is now called Levels. Sorry, it was formerly called Women in Electronic Music. A sound advice panel, which is regular workshops from music industry experts. So becoming a member, first and foremost, gives you free access to all of those programs. They're all really great. A lot of them are available online after the workshop, but once we can go back to having these sort of events outside of online spaces, they're also really important networking opportunities that you should go to. So there is a lot of value in actually showing up, sitting in, meeting a few people. And like APRA, they do offer some travel benefits as well. So like APRA, you can get some discounts on carting your luggage around. You can get extra allowance for your gear, which is obviously very important as a musician. And again, like APRA, there will be certain other services that you need as a musician, like digital distribution, gear hire, studio hire, that listed on Music New South Wales website. Certain companies will give you discounts if you're a member. And also Music New South Wales provides funding to musicians through a number of grants. Chances are you actually know an artist that has received funding through Music New South Wales. I'd probably say that was true for you.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it can be anything from recording an album, if you need a place to stay to record an album, if you need to hire some studio time to record an album, if you have been selected to play Big Sound, which is a big music showcase, and you can't afford the travel, that's a possible route for funding through Music New South Wales, or to travel to any festival. There are various grants that they organize or help advertise that are really useful. And like I said, a lot of mid-level musicians have benefited from these funding programs, and once you're at a certain level, it's really important to start looking into these things, because it can be really useful and sort of give you that shot in the arm that you really need if you're looking to take things to the next level. Cool, and that probably wraps it up for Music New South Wales, although we are now going to cross to Jake Stone, who's actually done a bit of work for Music New South Wales. Like I mentioned at the start of the workshop, Jake is formerly of Bluejuice, really great Australian band, and since wrapping up with Bluejuice, he has done a bunch of different stuff within the music industry. He's programmed workshops, he's helped run them, he's hosted them, he's worked in a number of different ways with these great industry bodies. So hey Jake, thanks for joining us. Starting off, could you just introduce yourself and let everybody know what your involvement with Music New South Wales has been in the past?
Hey, my name is Jake Stone. I used to be the singer or one of two singers in the band Bluejuice and a songwriter. And I have been involved with Music New South Wales in the past as a producer for their live educational events and seminars, and often a host and kind of like conceptualizing those events.
Awesome, thanks Jake. Could you tell us a bit more about those workshops that you've planned or spoken at?
The event work that I've done with Music New South Wales as a producer has been mostly education oriented, so I would get people like Hermitude or Tom Tilley from then Hack, or you know, any number of musicians, broadcasters, journalists, people associated with the music industry, Todd Wagstaff, my ex-manager, or a number of other music managers, or who else, like Rob from Select Music, a booking agency in Sydney, a number of other different industry type people to come in and talk to young people about making a career in the music industry and how they might go about it, because sometimes it can be a little confusing to work out how to create income streams or to figure out how to best monetize the practice of being a professional musician. And you know, to be honest, without Stav and Ned, our original drummer, Stav being our other singer and Ned being our original drummer, we wouldn't have known very effectively how to make money out of it. Although Jamie, our bass player, and Jerry, our keyboard player, both worked for APRA, which is another organisation that provides songwriting royalties to musicians. But it can be very confusing when you're just starting out. You know, people undercut you in terms of fee. You know, you're asked to play for free a lot. You don't know how to turn your songs from recorded music into radio songs that are generating money, and there's not really an obvious roadmap, although to be honest there is a much more documented roadmap now than there was when I was doing it, or at least when I was initially doing it. I'm still doing it, but yeah, so that was my job, to put on seminars that young people come to for free, that were set up by Music New South Wales, and discuss all of those things with a panel of experts.
Do you need to be an established musician before engaging with organisations like Music New South Wales and APRA?
The answer is no, you don't, but it certainly helps to have some catalogue or something recorded if you're going to talk to APRA, because APRA is an organisation that primarily deal with recorded music and live performance royalties. So being an active musician is helpful. Having said that, you can set up a relationship with APRA and register yourself as a musician before you've done shows, if that's something that appeals to you. And it makes it easier to manage your business from the word go if you do. So, you know, jumping on the APRA website, it's spelled APRA. Just type that into Google and you'll get the website. Jump on there and have a look through live performance returns and how to register yourself as a musician, and that will walk you through all the things that you have to do.
And for those listening who want to apply for grants, do you need to be a little bit more established for that?
Yeah, it helps to be established with the grants, because obviously people who have been active and shown some commercial interest, let's call it, in their music, i.e. people coming to shows, radio play, people purchasing music or streaming music online. These kinds of figures really help when applying for grants, because the people who are looking at your grant application not only look at what you're suggesting you'll do, but also the return and interest that your music is generating thus far. And while we might not like to think of it as a business, when there's money involved, it is a business. So people are going to consider the business viability of what you're suggesting alongside the cultural and creative viability of it. And that's just a fact of the music industry. There's no reason to be upset about it. It can be turned to your advantage if you're strategic enough.
Thanks, Jake. That's some really awesome advice. So in your opinion, what is it about these workshops that Music New South Wales, councils and other institutions put on that makes them so valuable to young musicians?
The fact that they're free and they're accessible. The workshops set up by Music New South Wales, the Australia Council, APRA, PPCA, those different kinds of organisations, they're very valuable to young musicians because there's no barrier to entry whatsoever except for the awareness that they're on. And if you're on the internet and you go on these websites, you can find out when those seminars are on, and they're generally free. They often have snacks. I always made snacks. I always got snacks. So you get something to eat or a tea or coffee, and then you can sit there and listen to very successful people. I mean, American Rosso, who are a radio DJ and host duo, who had really attained a lot of success after moving from Triple J over to commercial radio, came along and did it for free. Tom Tilley did it for free. Linda Mariano did it for free. Virtually everyone contributes their time because they're quite happy to give back to the community that they've been in for so long. That's provided them with such an interesting lifestyle. And you know, it's kind of fun being an elder statesman of music. You get to talk to young people about things and feel self-important and feel like you've achieved something, and that can be really nice for your ego and for the feeling that you've given back to people as well. So there's a lot of positives there.
Sure.
So I really do think that that going to these seminars is very useful, not just because of that, but also because of the contacts that you'll make, because a lot of people who go to these seminars end up being quite famous. You know, young motivated musicians are going to turn up to these seminars, and they're gonna show up, and you're going to be involved, just like young musicians are going to be involved with FBI Radio or with 2SER Radio or with Amrap or with organisations like APRA or Music New South Wales, because they're trying as hard as they can to get into this scene. And I remember a very young Montaigne turning up to our shows, and that's where I initially met her. And you know, she was just always there, going to seminars and stuff like that, because she was keen to turn her passion for music into a career. And that can be the same for a lot of different people. So, you know, if you're in the Sydney region, which is where I am, there's many opportunities for you to come along and check out these seminars, and they're run very successfully by a group of people who are long-term music industry veterans. I suggest that you check it out online, find one that suits you and go along, or just go to all of them. I mean, who cares if you've got time, you know, you may as well do it. And I wish you the best of luck. And obviously, if you need to be in contact with me or with anyone else, you can follow up this video with Happy, and I don't mind if they give you my details and you can ask me some questions.
Thanks for that, Jake. That's super generous.
And yeah, I'll second that. You can't do a good workshop without snacks. Thanks for joining us, Jake. That was awesome.
See ya.
We're going to talk for a bit, just a short amount of time, about local councils now. So local councils, wherever you live, local councils do exist to stimulate the community, and the chances are that they have a local music program that you should check out. So we're going to be speaking just about City of Sydney today, because that's our local council and they're co-presenting this workshop. And you can kind of take them as an example. Most large inner city councils will have a lot of different programs that are quite similar to the ones we're about to describe. So look up your local council if you're outside the City of Sydney. Chances are they have some things going on as well. So using the City of Sydney as an example, things that they can provide to musicians are a variety of rehearsal spaces and gear hire. If you're a student, you can get a lot of this stuff for free, which is really amazing. Or if you're high school age, so if you're a bit younger and you want a place to rehearse that won't send your parents insane, which is pretty important. There's a couple of places that you can go to for free that are available on the City of Sydney website. They have a great gig resource, gig promotion resource called What's On. That's whatson.cityofsydney. On their website, and you can post your gig there for free. It's a great website, it gets lots of visits, and it has a pretty powerful newsletter as well that a lot of people read, and it's a place that you can just post your gig for free. Can't hurt. And lastly, they obviously provide funding for a number of events, event promoters, and especially all-age events. So if you're looking to put something on, if you're a promoter, if you're a young musician who wants to organize something that's very community focused, you can look up their funding programs and they might be able to help you out. And just to finish up, we're going to talk about Amrap, which is the Australian Music Radio Airplay Project. Amrap is sort of it's an organization that helps get your music on community radio. And to speak a little bit about it, we're actually going to cross over to Lachlan Wyllie, who actually works there as a support officer. Lockie also helps manage a couple of bands with his label Chiefly Sounds. He also works as a radio presenter for Amrap and FBI Radio. So, hey Lockie, how are you going?
Hey guys.
Can you start off by telling us what Amrap stands for and what it does?
Amrap stands for the Australian Music Radio Airplay Project. It's an online platform. It's a catalogue, essentially, of brand new Australian music accessible to community radio broadcasters from across Australia. All the music on the platform is provided to us by Australian artists, whether that be by the artists themselves, their label, their management, their publisher, what have you. If you're an Australian artist, or you're an artist currently living in Australia, you are eligible for Amrap.
Take note, everybody, this is really important. And Lockie, why should these musicians be using Amrap to begin with?
Now, having your music up on Amrap basically means that you have massively increased the reach of your music. There's so many community radio stations out there, and there's far too many to put on just one email list or one database. There's hundreds of stations out there and thousands of broadcasters, and by putting your music up on Amrap, you're making your music accessible to all of them. And I think it's really important for musicians to get their music on the platform as a first start to entering the world of having their music interacting with community radio, finding stations that will support your music, and building up an audience. This is how so many of the great artists in Australia right now, some of the top selling artists, all started on community radio. And Amrap is a service that's here to make your first steps into the world of community radio a little bit easier.
Helping with those first steps for a new muso goes a very long way. For those whose eyes and ears are perking right now, what do artists need to know before uploading to Amrap for the first time?
Get your game plan together, and you want to get your assets together. Now, assets is just a word that we use referring to creative material that relates to your work. So that is an image of yourself, a nice press image taken by a friend, taken by a professional photographer. If you have a really nice image, that goes a really, really long way. Having a bio for yourself as an artist. This is something that I think a lot of artists overlook and shouldn't be, because there's a lot of music out there, and you might find that there's just one sentence or one turn of phrase that sticks out to someone reading your bio that might make them more compelled to check out your music, or alternatively might give them a wider context or appreciation of your music. It happens all the time in my experience, and I think even though it can be a little bit of effort, having a really good bio for yourself as an artist is crucial. What else? You want to make sure that you're all set up on social media. Choose your platform. Not everyone needs a Twitter account, not everyone needs an Instagram account, but choose your main, I would say at least 2 platforms, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok even, and make sure that those are the platforms that you are primarily interacting with your fans on. And finally, I would say having a strategy for the release of your music. Have you got a song? Is that part of an album? Is it part of an EP? Is there a video that's coming out alongside it? If you know what you're doing with all these creative materials and how you want to release it, you're already ahead above the rest, because you're starting to think through how to release your music and the most effective way to get that music heard.
It really does go a long way, guys.
And you're a broadcaster as well, so how does Amrap interact with radio stations?
Yes, I am a broadcaster at a community radio station in Sydney called FBI Radio. I do a show there twice a week called The Bridge, every Tuesday and Wednesday night. It's a Sydney music program. And I also do a show every week for Amrap called the Amrap Radio Show, which is a spotlight on great new Aussie music up on the platform. So I use Amrap a lot, not only as a staff member and an admin, but also as a broadcaster, and I have been doing so for about 8 years. And for me, Amrap is incredibly important to the work of putting together music for broadcasting. And the reasons why are twofold. There's discoverability and accessibility. When I say discoverability, what I mean is the ability to find and discover great new Aussie music up on the platform that you wouldn't have otherwise come across. Now, whether that be your main avenues of discovery are blogs, Spotify playlists, other websites, there's still pretty much always going to be something that slips through the cracks, and sometimes some really great music as well. I can think of plenty of artists off the top of my head that I've discovered through Amrap and Amrap alone that are brilliant, that are local musicians, and that I continue to support to this day. And the other reason is accessibility. Now, when I mean accessibility as a broadcaster, I need access to your song in some sort of file format, whether that be a MP3 or a WAV. Amrap offers both, in order to put it to air on my programs. And if I don't have access to your music, then that's kind of that's kind of killer. So if there may be some really great music out there that I don't have access to, and I don't know who the right person to get in contact with. Maybe I don't have a contact at the label, and if I don't have that access, then I can't put it to air. And so having your music up on Amrap, it basically knocks down a barrier of access, because you want your music to be as discoverable and as accessible as possible. And if you do so on Amrap, you're basically opening up your music to be discovered by the entire world of Australian community radio. And I think that's a really important thing, and I think that that's something that's really critical for getting your music out there to Australian community radio, and using that as a starting point to begin to build and launch your career.
Thanks, Lockie. That's some really great advice. But it's also maybe coming from a musician's perspective as well. Have you interacted with Amrap as a musician?
Yeah, for sure. Much like APRA and Music New South Wales, Amrap is a super easy platform to use. Really easy to make an account as an artist, and every time you have a release, I always upload it on there, and basically what happens is your song, or if it's an EP or an album or whatever, but you can even just do it for a song. I always make sure that I do. It gets sent out to all these community radio stations around the country that you don't even know exist, and then your music can be played by them, and you'll get a little report back in a couple of weeks, and you'll find out that my song's been played on this little regional station somewhere in Queensland, or this bigger station in Melbourne. You never know, and it's a really awesome opportunity for exposure, and again, really easy to do. Amrap are awesome.
Yeah, and look, like Lockie said, you really never know where the audience for your music is going to be until you get there. Every radio station is different. Some support certain kinds of music, some support others. And hey, your music might be the perfect fit for a radio station that you've never heard of. So using a resource like Amrap that has that database already and has that knowledge is, incredibly useful, and you should be doing it. And that wraps up our workshop today. So this has been the What Your Community Can Do For You workshop. It's part of the Building Your Creative Community series, which is co-presented by Happy Mag and the City of Sydney. If you're just joining us, don't worry, this will stay online as a video after it's wrapped up as a live video. So you can feel free to rewatch it whenever you have the time. And we'll also be taking questions for the next 24 hours or so. So if you've had any questions about anything that we've talked about, feel free to drop that into the comments, and we'll get back to you when we can. And just to give the next workshop a shout out, we are at one more workshop after this. The next one is a week from today. It is on June 10th at the same time, and it is called Your Wider Community. So now that we've covered a couple of the bases on how to build a community around your art and your music, and sort of how to do a couple of those first steps kind of things, we're going to talk about what happens a bit further down your line when you have a few more fans, when you have a few people who are sort of interacting with you regularly, the ways to keep them stimulated and the ways to make your fans feel appreciated. See you later. Thanks for joining in.